What's going on, and welcome to another episode of the Fuel Your Vision podcast. Today's guest is a college dropout turned author igniter. This guy helps authors launch and scale their books, reaching top seller status on massive platforms such as Amazon, the Wall Street Journal, and even the New York Times. He's a high ticket king when it comes to creating sales for his business, charging upwards of $50,000 to work with him and his team. But with that, he has hundreds of testimonies and successful stories of people who have absolutely loved his services. He's an author himself. He's a highly paid speaker, and he's an incredible podcast host, having done over 1,500 episodes himself. He's also the owner of the company Authors Unite. He's a full-blown entrepreneur and a true visionary. I want to introduce my good friend, Tyler Wagner. I'm super excited for this episode because we're going to be diving into some really cool things. First off, we're going to be talking about how Tyler went out there and scored an interview in New York City at Gary Vaynerchuk's office, all from a simple tweet within an hour. Crazy stuff. We're also going to be diving into some different tips and tricks that you can go out there and use if you're interested in launching and scaling your own podcast. And last but not least, he's going to be sharing a story about how he had a divine encounter where he almost died in a crazy car accident. So I'm really excited to share all this with you. There's so much value packed inside of this episode. I truly do hope you enjoy. With that, let's go ahead and jump right in. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fuel Your Vision podcast with your host, Alex Lombard. Super excited to have my man, Tyler Wagner, on the call, a.k.a. Tyler Wags. Man, I appreciate it. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. So Tyler and I met about a year ago. It's coming up on a year. And you actually reached out to me on Instagram to get on your podcast, which we'll talk about a little bit in this show. And I got on there. I loved it, man. It was really, really cool. It was one of the very first ones, or maybe even the first one that I ever did back when I was kind of doing a podcast blitz with a bunch of people. And you crushed it. I loved it. And then what was really awesome, man, is that we ended up going to the Grant Cardone, the 10X Growth Con out in Miami last year. And you showed up and you came and kicked it with my crew. And, that was really cool, man. That was a lot of fun. So that's kind of how we go back.
And then, you guys threw down after, man. You guys took over Miami.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. Yeah, did you come to the party? I forget.
I did. I left a little early. I think, that party went pretty late. So
yeah.
My bedtime's I get up very early, so I get tired at 10 or 11.
Got it. Yeah. So for those who don't know, we went to Grant Cardone's event and we threw the craziest Super Bowl party I've ever been a part of. We have a buddy out there, shout out to Julian. He owns Juju Rentals, and he had access to this massive mansion in Miami, and literally within 48 hours we created flyers. We had a squad of 30 people posting on their Instagrams, their Facebooks, everything, just promoting the Super Bowl party because it was over Super Bowl weekend. And I think we had and we even charged for this too. We charged admission to get in, and we had 350 people roll through this house party for the Super Bowl. It was absolutely insane.
It was big.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. We had a really good time. That was honestly one of the best weekends in all of 2019 for me, honestly. So I'm glad that you got to be a part of it. But yeah, it was cool. It shows you the power of what social media and podcasting can do. We just met that way, and here we are a year later. Now you're on my show.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. Yeah.
That's cool. So starting off, man, let's kind of dive into a little background on yourself. One of the things I love to do on the show is, give some history of each guest. So I want you to just give us your story, whatever you want to say, start young, how did you get to where you're at today? How old are you, by the way?
28.
28. So how did you just wherever you want to start, but give us a little background on who you were as a kid growing up, high school, did you go to college, all that stuff. And then, we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so the best place to start is probably 20. But when I was a younger kid, I've always just been a very outgoing guy, hence the podcast. With my own podcast, I've interviewed 1,500 people in a year and a half,
Crazy.
Just crazy numbers. But you fast forward to 20 years old, what happened is I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. many entrepreneurs know of the book. I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
And it just changed. I feel like it like rewired my brain. Like what happened is after I read it, I already knew I didn't want to go into corporate, but I went to college because I was just, a normal lost 18-year-old not knowing what I was going to do as a career. So I go to college because that's what you do after high school. And then 2 years in, I read that book, and it like gave me the confidence to at least drop out of school. I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet, but I dropped out of school. And
Two
really
years in? Sorry to interrupt. 2 years in?
Yeah, 2 years in. And really what happened, the main part of the book that made me do that, besides equipping me with a bunch of knowledge, was one part of the book, he says, what's the worst that can happen? A lot of times in our minds, we create these like fears that we think something way worse could happen than really, really would. And that's what hit me. I realized, I was like, if I drop out and I really fail, the worst that could happen is I just go back to school. That's really not that bad, like
right.
what's this? But I was creating all these like imaginary fears. Like if I don't make it, I'm going to have to live back at home with my mom and dad forever. I'm going to be a failure. Like all these crazy things
on the streets.
Yeah. I'll be on the street. So it just wasn't real, but either way, funny thing is 6 months later, I end up at an event and I am helping put the event on, and Tim Ferriss is the keynote speaker of that event.
Wow. That's
because
awesome.
what I did to gain knowledge after I dropped out was read books, and then I would reach out to conference coordinators and ask them if I could help with, like, go to the event for free in exchange for helping them. And it turns out, dude, a lot of them said yes. So like literally my first reach out, Tim Ferriss is the keynote. The guy that's putting on the conference says yes. I fly out to Toronto and I'm literally like eating dinner with Tim Ferriss like 6 months later.
That's crazy.
So then I realized just like the power of people, and this is already my natural thing. Like I just love connecting with people anyway.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, I want to be a public speaker. So then a bunch of mentors in my life are like, the root word of authority is author. You should write a book, and then you could get paid to speak on said topic. So I write a book, ends up doing really well, and then I get paid to speak on stages. And then what happens quicker, though, is that a bunch of people ask me how I did the book effectively. And then that's how Authors Unite, that's my main company, 8 years later. Because I wrote the book when I was 20, maybe it launched when I was 21. So Authors Unite, I've been running that for about 7-8 years. And we help people write, publish, and market their books. So, and to summarize the story, like sometimes you stumble upon your career just by like making moves in a sense. Like I didn't write a book to help others with books, but from writing the book, it changed my life. And then it turned out that so many others wanted the same. And I had built an expertise by doing it myself and then created an entire business off of it.
Yeah.
So,
wow. That's incredible, man. So I actually didn't even know you wrote a book. Is the book called Authors Unite, or what's the name of the book?
No, it's called Conference Crushing. So it's about how to crush conferences.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And again, I can't take all the credit for how it turned out, but what ended up happening is like the book is broken into 3 parts. It teaches you what to do before, during, and after an event to like maximize your ROI at the event. So what ended up happening is after I wrote it, then conferences would reach out to me and ask me to speak at the events to like open up and teach the room how to max. And I didn't even think about it that deeply, but it was like kind of perfect,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was my first book. I like it. It's like 70 pages. It's solid though. Yeah, it's a good book.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's really cool. And I want to definitely, talk about the Authors Unite. Let's get into that here in a second. Before we do though, so getting into entrepreneurship, what's fascinating to me is learning about how other business owners, other, entrepreneurs like ourselves, just kind of how they get into that world. Because, like you said, it's, entrepreneurship it's first off, it's definitely a completely different style than what you're taught most of the time growing up. Obviously school does not teach you or breed you to become an entrepreneur. And like he says in the book, what's the worst that can happen? And so would you say that reading that book is what made you kind of go that direction 100%? Or were there any other factors? Like when you were younger, were you always kind of like looking, looking different than everyone else? Because I know for me, real quick, when I was
Yeah.
growing up, I didn't really know what entrepreneurship meant. If you would have asked me that, I would have thought you like owned a gas station or invented something.
Yeah.
But I always had the tendencies, like when I was in high school, I remember sitting in class being like, there's just literally no shot I'm going to go down this path. Like I am not going to go sit in a corporate office. I got to figure something else out, and then that's kind of what that seed is, what led me to a series of chain events that got me to where I'm at today. So I'm curious about you. Was it the book from Tim Ferriss, or was there anything prior to that that kind of planted the seeds?
Yeah, thinking back, it was definitely some other things when I was younger that were kind of planted, and it was really seeing some people in my life that were
Mm,
in corporate and seeing them consistently not happy, like on a daily basis, just not being happy with it, and also feeling like they didn't have full control of the outcome, right? And that's kind of the funny, it's almost like a paradox. It's like a lot of people get a job at a corporation because they think it's the safe move, and we're kind of
yeah.
taught that, right? I remember being younger in school, like 9 out of 10 businesses fail, and it like kind of scares you, like most entrepreneurs fail. But in reality, I feel safer on this side of the fence, because if you're in a big
Same.
corporate, like if you're in a big corporation and they're making cuts, I mean, you're out, dude. It ain't that
Yeah.
safe, in my opinion. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, seeing the not so happy part of it, like, corporate, you can make good money and some people are happy there, but I just didn't see that when I was younger. So I think it was built into my subconscious, and I knew I didn't want to go, but I didn't know what else to do. And then that book somehow like equipped me with the knowledge or the confidence to at least try. So it was
Yeah.
all that added up, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, man. And you talk about, like your circle of influence, the people that, are in your life, and you're kind of studying what they're doing, and you're like, I don't even, I don't want to do that. And I find that interesting, because I know for me, my own story, I think back that one of my best friends when I was growing up, I remember one day we were like in, I don't know, ninth grade, maybe we were hanging out, and his dad comes home from work, and I forget what we were doing, but he said something along the lines of, enjoy your freedom now, because as soon as you're done with, school, you no longer have it. And that just always stuck with me, because it's same thing. I was like, I don't want to do that. Like I want to have freedom. I want to be able to do what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like I don't really want to go and get a job and be strained down like that. So interesting, man. I think that's super, super interesting. So let's shift over a little bit here.
Yeah.
Authors Unite. I was looking into that. I've talked to you a lot about that. We were talking before this call when we jumped on here, and I was telling you that I find it really fascinating, because I don't know personally any other person, entrepreneur, anyone in my network that does anything like that, and so I think it's really cool, and it's really fascinating. And so you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but give us kind of like the macro scope of what Authors Unite is and what it does for people.
Yeah. So basically, we help people write, publish, and then market their book. And then not only just the book, but also build like the back end of their platform. So in my mind, a book, and it depends what genre you write in, but if it's a business or personal development book, a lot of times it's not just about the book. The book is like the foundation. And then you branch off into like speaking or a course, or something else like consulting done for you services. And, basically what I found from being in this industry for 8 years is that most publishers do not do marketing for their authors. It's kind of like left up to the author. So that's where, as an entrepreneur, you start to see a lot of opportunities. So I started to see like a very big hole in the publishing space. I was like, no publishers, like I literally don't know of a publisher that does marketing for their authors, like that actually like fully does marketing for their authors. Maybe like a little bit of like, hey, try this, try that, but not like a full blown, like this is the plan. So that's what's really taken us off. And so we do publishing, help you with the writing, but most of our business comes from partnering with publishers, and then they send us their authors to take care of all the marketing steps.
Gotcha. Okay. So on your site, you said that you help authors launch their books too, right? That's
Yeah.
part of it. And so how many people have you done that for?
So personally, over 300, if you include, like, we've done collaboration books with 100 people in them. So technically we've worked with over 700 authors, But
Wow.
if you talk about personal books, we've launched personal books over 300.
That's crazy, man. And I saw too on your site, you help people become a top, like a bestseller. Right?
Yeah.
Like you help them, like, is that on Amazon, or is it just like in different areas, or like explain that a little bit? Cause I know that's part of like your packages too. Like it's kind of one of the guarantees that we're going to help you,
Yeah.
become a top seller.
So there's like four major lists, right? So it's Amazon, USA Today, Wall Street, and the New York Times.
Okay.
So we do Amazon, USA Today, and Wall Street currently. And basically, we put together like a huge campaign, and the focus is that you want to get as many sales as possible in a short period of time. So if you're going for Amazon, you really want that to all happen in like one day. So if you get like 1,000 sales in a day, you'll probably hit Amazon. For Wall Street and USA Today, it's a little trickier, and it's more sales. Like you want to get about 10,000 sales in a week, and you want those sales to be from like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and like a couple other stores potentially. And the way we do it, just behind the scenes, because it might be of interest to the listeners, is again kind of boils down to relationships. Over the years, I've built relationships with people that have very large email lists of people that have put in their emails saying they want to be notified when a new book comes out at a discounted rate in a specific genre. So when we do a launch and our goal is to hit the Wall Street, we will literally send like 5 million emails out in a 1 week time frame, and then discount the ebook. And then it's like, they know they only have a certain amount of time to get the book at a discounted rate. So it kind of creates that like scarcity effect as well. And then we kind of just know like, 5 million people are getting this email. So do we think we can get 10,000 sales? Like probably that's a pretty low percentage. And that's how we pretty much do it. There's some other little tricks to it, but ultimately, building those relationships and then just having all that volume hit in a short period of time.
Dude, that is so cool, man. That was literally my next question, was like, give us some tactics that you use to do this, because I can't, I didn't even know that. You said Amazon's about 1,000 in a day, and then you got, the Wall Street's like 10,000. That's insane,
Yeah.
bro. I was like, how do that was literally my next question, is how do you even do that? So that's really cool. So you basically use a form of like almost like influencer marketing, but in the email world, So like for me, like I do a lot of stuff with Instagram, and I'll go and promote people's products, services, books, whatever, utilizing my network of influencers that have a lot of followers in that kind of genre. You're almost doing the same thing, but you're blasting it out to targeted people on email lists that I assume people or companies own those lists, and then you're sending out
Exactly.
emails paying for that.
Yep. Yeah. So like, they pay Authors Unite up front. I disperse it to the email lists. I will go a little bit deeper just so the listeners like know like kind of all of it is with Amazon. It is categories. So just know, like, say if you wanted to become an Amazon bestseller, this is just the truth. So if you want to become an Amazon bestseller in like a category of like sewing, you might
Mhm.
only need to sell like 10 books in a day, just to be clear. Now, your book's probably not about sewing, so you probably don't want to do that. But if you want to become a number one bestseller, maybe it is for any of the sewers out there. I apologize.
I doubt I
But
have any sewer listeners. Don't worry.
you never know, man. We wear suits with those buttons, so who knows?
That's
But
true. That's true.
if you want to hit like number one in all of nonfiction and like get in front of like Tim Ferriss's book on Amazon, that you're talking closer to like 1,000 sales in a day. And then the Wall Street only has 10 spots per week. So that's like a weekly list. So you're going
Mm.
up against like very, very heavy hitters. That's why, you got to get those sales. Um, and then just to explain a little deeper, when we do the email list campaigns, we'll actually put like a pixel. So we build a simple landing page with like the book, a little sales copy, and then links to the bookstores. And then we do a Facebook pixel, and then we'll retarget the people that click from the email campaigns. So they'll get like Facebook ads saying like 4 days left at 99 cents, 3 days left. So we like follow them across the platforms. And then we also do some Amazon and Barnes and Noble ads, just so people know the full mechanism there.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. So let's say I launch a book. I come to you. I'm like, bro, I want to get this thing out there. I want to blow it up. what is that? You kind of explained a little bit of the process. What is it? I know what you do is pretty, I mean, it's freaking legit. You guys just heard obviously the process of what he does. He's got, 300 clients he's worked with, books that he's helped go out there and launch. You said over 700 if you include everything else, all the partners. So obviously what you're doing is legit, man. So for someone like me, entrepreneur, let's say I wrote a book, I came to you, I'm like, hey man, I want to get this going. What does that process look like for me? Like what is the expected, range of money I have to invest? Like, what does that kind of look like?
Yeah. So basically we have on the marketing side, like 3 different options. So first option, if you want to do like an Amazon or Barnes and Noble campaign and just like get to the top of all of nonfiction, we charge 10 grand for that. It can be broken up into like monthly payments, so it doesn't have to be all up front. For Wall Street or USA Today, if that's the goal, we charge 50 grand for that. And that could be 2 payments of 25. But basically with the Wall Street USA Today, again, there's only 10 spots on the Wall Street every week. So we can only really do one of those per week. So that kind of, it's like the first 25 is like, yo, I need to pay my partners and like have them lock in that week to their email list. You know how that goes. Like there's some people with email lists, like they're booked with promotions for the next year.
Yeah.
So you gotta, I mean, that's just what that is. And then the last part that we do, because we don't want to leave the author, when the iron's hot. So basically we have another option that we charge 15 grand for, where we'll build the whole back end of their business for them and then start pitching them to media directly after they hit the list. So as soon as you hit the Wall Street, then you want to start going after like TV, podcasts, blogs, and get featured, because now, your book just did extremely well. Now's the time to get the word out and get, more momentum with it.
Yeah. Pour more fuel on the fire.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. So for any of those out there listening, if you're serious about, getting your book launched, you want to get out there and get it as a top seller on some of the biggest platforms in the world, this is the guy to talk to you, man. And this is all on your website, authorsunite.com, correct?
Yep. Yeah. It's all there.
Cool. Awesome, brother. Awesome. So let's shift over again, man. I want to spend some time on your podcast, because this is where we actually connected originally. And I know, you've been crushing it. So you said, so first off, your podcast is the Business Blast podcast, correct?
So actually, I just recently changed it. It's called the Authors Unite Show now.
Oh, smart move. There you go.
Yeah,
Keep
branding.
the branding aligned. Yeah. That's funny, man. Okay, cool. So, but yeah, so your show, you've done, they're shorter episodes, right? Yours are like, kind of like right to the point, just quick, boom, boom, boom. Like you do more of the short format.
Yeah. So I recently changed. The first 1,000 were like that. And now I actually do just like this, like an hour open conversation, just because.
That's awesome.
I will tell you that as fun as the short ones were, when you ask the same exact questions every time to 1,000 people, you start to go a little crazy. So yeah, this format is better for longevity.
Yeah, I can see that, man. 100%. No, that's that makes sense. And so you've done, what was the number? 1,500.
It's about 1,500. It might be a little less or a little more, but I know it's over 1,400.
Dude, yeah. That is ridiculous. That's so crazy. I love that. And so when did you start your podcast, and why did you start your podcast?
So it was February 2018. So I guess that's about almost 2 years then. It's been almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in February.
So you were banging out multiple shows a day then?
Yeah. So when I was doing the short format, there was some days that I would do like 15 or 20 in a day. Like I would just talk about, dude, but I got to tell you, to some people that seems like very like not fun. To me, those were the days that went by the fastest, and I was most present, because I was just so, every 20, 30 minutes, man, it was like meet somebody new, connect, interview, next one.
Yeah.
But so why, honestly, it was kind of 2 reasons. The first one was more just for fun. And I had been looking for something to make podcasting simple, because all the other platforms that I heard about, it seemed complex. Like you have to edit the audio, you got to do all these things. And then I came across Anchor. So for anybody, that's what I use. I find it to be very just easy. So I come across this tool, Anchor, and it just helped make it simple. And I was like, okay, now I can do this really easily. And then after about maybe 100 or 200 shows in, I realized this is pretty good for lead generation as well. And because it turns out like almost everybody at least has thought about writing a book. So what ended up happening is I would interview these people, and it was an authentic interview, but afterward they'd find out what I do. And then they would either reach out to me, or maybe I'd reach out to them and be like, hey, based off the interview, you probably should write a book. And if you're interested, we can help. So it ended up growing the business. So then I like doubled down on it. And then really though, even more than that, what ended up happening is just the relationships, right? So I ended up interviewing this one woman, and then she tweets at Gary Vaynerchuk an hour later. And it's like, you should come on this guy's show. It was like a great experience. And he tweets back minutes later and just says, fine. And then literally next thing I know, like 2 months later, I'm in New York at Gary Vee's office interviewing him. You know, it's just like the more people you connect with, from my experience, you never know how much opportunity could be behind one person.
Absolutely.
So every week I'm interviewing people, I'm connecting with them from LinkedIn, I'm just talking, and things just happen. So
yeah,
that's why I continue to do it. I like it. And it also just opportunities are endless with it. So
yeah.
yeah.
Dude, that's awesome, man. I mean, yeah, they always say your network equals your net worth. And I love that, because even more than just monetarily, it's just like, the relationships you have and the people you meet and the things you get to do and experience through those connections in that network, all kind of build that net worth. And obviously, of course, business deals too. But that's really cool, man. And so, yeah, I forgot about that. You told me about that a long time ago, the Gary Vee thing. Go into detail a little bit about that. How was that experience? Because obviously Gary is like, kind of the top of the food chain when it comes to entrepreneurship. Yeah. So yeah, share that.
Dude, it was awesome, man. So for me, I will not lie. I'm a little bit of a fanboy for Gary Vee. It's true.
Sure.
Him and Tim Ferriss are like I've just learned so much from them. So
yeah.
I fly to New York, go into his office. He's like 10 minutes late to the interview, but he comes in, and this was the thing I liked the most, is that, he definitely had back-to-back meetings, like he's very booked. He sat down in the room, and I had a video guy with me as well. And he basically was just like, I'm ready when you are. And there was no like sense of urgency or rush. Like we basically had maybe 20, 30 minutes with him in there. But I feel like we could have maybe been in there for an hour. Like, and he would have given us the time. So the experience was amazing. And I just think very humble guy for how much success that he's had.
That's awesome. I've actually heard that a lot. It's about him being very present when he's with people. And if you watch his stuff, you would kind of almost think the opposite, because he's a very like, ADHD, like impatient, like go. And so you would think that when he's with somebody that it would kind of be like that. But I've actually heard that from a couple people, that when, just like obviously the bigger stars and stuff, when he's interviewing them, that's different. He's on with Tony Robbins or whatever, that's one thing. But like someone like you or me or, another, just, we're obviously not at those levels, and we're not like globally known like that. And so when we get in the office or get in the, in a room with him, for him to dedicate not only that time, but then like you said, you probably could have kept him there even longer and you would have kept going. I mean, that just, speaks a lot, man. So that's really cool. So I bet that was fun, man. I bet you had a good time doing that.
It was, dude. It was like the first time in a while that I was nervous, like out of
sure.
100 interviews, like I've never really been too nervous. And like, dude, this one, the 10-minute wait felt like longer than that.
yeah. And you like he walks in, you're like, oh, that's crazy, man. I love it. And so, okay, besides the Gary Vee one, who would you say, is there anyone that sticks out that is like your favorite interview that you've ever done? Or maybe it's not even the Gary one. I don't know, but.
Yeah. No, Gary was just the whole experience, right? But this guy, Oren Klaff, I don't know if you ever heard of him. He wrote a book called Pitch Anything.
Yes, I've heard of the book. That's how I know him.
Okay. Yeah, so I interviewed him, and I don't know. It was just an awesome interview, man. He's a character, and he kept me on my toes. Like, it was just funny. I don't know how else to explain it. It was just a cool interview. Like, we talked about him and his book, and his personality is just very strong. And there was a couple times where I'd ask him a question, and then he would like ask me one, and it was almost like it was like a boxing match, and like I didn't see things coming, and I was like just left stunned a couple times. So it was a fun interview. Yeah.
That's cool, man. That's really cool. I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, I know for me personally, like this is totally a passion project. Like, yeah, sure, I'd love to monetize it eventually, but at the end of the day, like I want to do this because it's fun. Like I love just getting on with people like you, just hearing your story and connecting and learning and and just chopping it up and having a good time. And so I could see why that would be fun. That's interesting. I'll have to check him out, see if he's someone I want to get on
him
here.
out, dude. He's cool. He's fun.
Heck yeah, man. So for, any of the podcast newbies out there, including myself, what are some tips, man? Give us some insight on how to launch and scale a successful podcast.
Okay. So, Anchor, I do recommend. It's anchor.fm. So shout out.
Have you ever heard of Buzzsprout? Sorry to interrupt, but have you ever heard of Buzzsprout?
I actually just saw one of my past clients. They're using Buzzsprout. So I don't know anything about it,
okay.
But it's a good platform? You like it?
Yeah, that's what I'm using. I was originally going to use Anchor. A guy I just interviewed is a good friend and a mentor of mine. He uses Buzzsprout, and the way he put it, he's just like, basically, they're all good at the end of the day. It's just like whatever one you start with is usually the one you're going to recommend and stay with. But I know Anchor is really good. I was just curious if you've ever heard of Buzzsprout.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just recently have. So, using one of those two platforms, they're very easy. Zoom, right? Just for the recording. And to get kind of off the technical stuff, I think you can't be afraid to reach out, right? So like I found you on Instagram and I just reached out. And in all honesty, right? Like, and I was telling you this, I think before, on Instagram, I reach out to a lot of people that I find interesting that I want to interview. And then LinkedIn, I reach out to a lot of people for the podcast and just for like potential partnership conversations. And, I'm talking like in the hundreds every week, like we're reaching out, so that's really my biggest tip is it's like, I feel like so many people are kind of afraid to just ask. Yeah. And at the end of the day, like I've and I haven't gotten, I've DM'd like Tony Robbins. I'm not gonna like, like as crazy as that sounds, like
you might as well, right?
Yeah. Like what, you don't have anything to lose. Like, it's still not, it hasn't been read, like, so I don't know, but just reach out and then, like, and me and you connected and let, with your Instagram stuff, like the opportunities for me and you are, who knows what could happen. Right. A year later, now I'm on your show. So, reach out to anybody that you want to. And even if you get 90% no's or no responses, if you reach out to hundreds a week, you still got like 10 to 20, 30 yeses every week, so it's a numbers game. And then one thing I realized recently too, because we didn't do this in the beginning, is if you can create like a custom image for your guests, I think I'm noticing that they're sharing it more often. Whereas the first couple hundred podcasts, or it could have been even more than that, like we were pretty much just like sharing the link with our guest and then just being like, hey, share it if you want. So maybe create something, it'll take a little more work on the back end, but make it very easy and fun for the interviewee to share. So a custom social media image, and whatever else you can think of, just kind of help them share it, because that's kind of the point too, right? So it's like when we do this interview, if I share it on all my socials, it's good for me because I was interviewed, but it's also good for you because it's growing your audience. So think about that too, man. Like everybody you interview has the potential to share your podcast. You can grow a podcast pretty quickly.
That's amazing. That's actually really good advice. I actually jotted that down. I never even thought to do that. And it makes sense because like this last year I did kind of like a podcast blitz where I was on a bunch of shows, yours included. And I totally realized that when people would send me, once the podcast is live, they would send me the link, then they would send me a bunch of creatives and they're like, feel free to share it. And I always would, because it looked good. It was like, dude, this is dope. Yeah. I want to share this. Like, check out the show I was just on, So no, that's a really good piece of advice, man. And I love the numbers game thing. I've always been about that, and anything, it doesn't even matter if it's sales or, booking guests for a podcast. Anytime you got to fill slots or get on the phone with people or whatever, sell tickets, it's always a numbers game. And at the end of the day, it's like, if you just run enough numbers, you will fill spots, especially for your show. And so I think that's really, really cool. That's super solid advice, man. So appreciate you for sharing that. Awesome. So Shifting gears to the kind of the last subject here, man, a big piece of this show, like we mentioned at the beginning, is the faith-based aspect of it. It's something that I'm very, very passionate about. There's a lot of podcasts out there that, they dive into business stuff. They talk about entrepreneurship. They talk about, things like this that we're talking about. But I haven't really found a whole lot that do kind of talk more about the spiritual side of things. And, we don't have to get super deep about it, but just some basic things that, I would love to learn about from you is, starting off is how important is like your faith with your business, but also just your everyday life?
Yeah, man. What I'd say is that I think you have to believe in something more than yourself. Because if not, it's like it starts to get not like you feel disconnected,
Yeah.
like right. So to me, it's like I like to just know that like we're all connected in some fashion, right? Like in my mind, that is actually very obvious.
Yeah.
Like we have to be, right? Like even this, like the air that we're breathing, like it's all connected. So I feel more comfortable knowing that. And I'd say without it, I don't know if I'd be where I am, because again, it's like there's almost two ways of living. It's like disconnected, like I'm isolated, I'm Tyler Wagner, nobody understands me, I don't believe in anything beyond myself. And to me, that's a pretty lonely existence. Or the other side is like, I believe that this is all connected, we're separate people, but at the end of the day, we're still both people living on this same planet. Like there is things that are similar to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm on more of the connected side. Like,
Yeah.
like we have differences, but we also have a lot of similarities.
Right.
So hopefully that answered the question. It's just lean in a little, be like, join the group.
Right. Right. Yeah, man. No, absolutely. And I mean, I think, without any sort of, like you said, faith in anything, it's just like, what is even the purpose? Like, why are you even building your business? Why are you dedicating time and energy towards anything? It's like, you might as well just like, just sit at home and, watch TV. It's like, there's nothing to it.
Yeah. I just thought of something. I think it kind of like a perfect example is like somebody who's very wealthy, but is not happy, right?
Mm.
It kind of goes to that thing where it's like, if you build something that makes you monetarily a lot, you make a lot of money, but it's not something that like you believe in, and it's not making an impact, I do believe you will find yourself just pretty lonely and like not happy. And there's many examples of this. So, it's also, it's like for somebody starting out in business, it's something that you should probably consider too. Like, and that's what, with podcasting and books, that's when it really hit me, is I was like, I could see myself when I'm 80, and like, we both have no idea where the technology will be in that time. But, I could see myself doing this when I'm 80, because I love it enough. I believe in it, and I believe it's making an impact. Same thing with books. Like, it's people sharing their knowledge with everybody. So to me, the money is there, but it's not my like happiness, and there's been studies on that too. I think there's like a study that it's like, once you surpass 70 grand a year, which basically is an amount in the US to like, you don't have to really think about the bills anymore or whatever. Like you're good on most fronts of survival. Happiness does not increase much after that. So, consider these things. Like, it's like, all right, well then what is happiness? And like, I don't know. I like to dive into those things.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. It's literally my favorite quote, from the legend himself, Tony Robbins. He says, the ultimate failure is succeeding and not being fulfilled. It's like success.
Oh, dude, I didn't know that quote.
The exact quote is success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. That's what he always says. And it's so freaking true, and I know for me, dude, that what you said is it applies to me personally, because I was at a time, there was years of my life where I was like dead broke, just struggling, trying to make it, young entrepreneur, just hustling to get, every dime mattered, just to like pay the bills, in a straight survival mode. The goal was just to make money, whatever. And then, once I kind of got to that like 6-figure mark, like you just said, it's like that initial like rush of happiness that came with that slowly diminished. And it was like, I realized that, now I went in this phase where I just always wanted more and more and more, and so what it really forced me to do and made me realize was like, there's more to life than just making money. You know, it is crucial. It is a critical part. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but literally in the New Testament, Jesus talks about money more than any other subject. You know, a lot of people don't know
Oh,
that.
really?
And it's like, and the reason why is because he knows how much it's going to affect and play a role in our day-to-day lives through all generations, you know? And so it's a very important aspect to life. And it's something else too, like a little minor thing I really want to do with this podcast is talk more about that subject in the faith context, because, you know, I do believe that, you know, God wants you to be successful. He wants you to be wealthy and all that stuff. But a lot of people just take it out of context. And one of the ways they do that is they think it's going to make them happy. And that's not at all what it's for. And so anyways, man, no, that's awesome. I love that. You crushed that. One last question for you in that realm of things too. And this is totally off the cuff. I don't know if you have an answer to this right away. It's kind of a little bit of a deeper one, but has there ever been like a time that comes to mind? And if not, it's totally fine. But has there ever been a time in your life where it was very apparent that like God was there, right? Like something, like he helped you through something, or maybe not even like a dark side of it, but more of a positive, where it was like, dude, this was clearly a blessing from God. Like maybe like the Gary Vee thing is an example, but has there ever been something where it's just like, it's a higher power, like God did something in my life at this moment?
Yeah. So I definitely believe God or some angel. Like there's things with me for sure. Because two things kind of came to mind. One is that I do think it's almost a lot of my life, although I keep taking action, I have not necessarily like directly planned out, right? Even with the book stuff, right? Like I just wrote a book and then people started reaching out to me. 8 years later, that becomes my full career. You know, so to me, that kind of feels like, you know, that's kind of, it's kind of interesting. And then just all the people that I'm connecting with and like the opportunities that are happening. So as a whole, what I'm getting at is yes. But then a story when I was younger, I actually, when I was like 15 or 16, it was me and two buddies in a car. And it was actually my friend's car. It was her birthday, her 16th birthday car. Okay. This is like crazy.
I love stories like this. I'm already stoked.
It's rough. So I'm driving the car and we're on a back road. And, you know, when you're younger, you just do sometimes you can do stupid things at any age. But I'm on the wrong side of the road going like 40 or 50 on a back road. And just to be funny, I suppose. And it was
you were
really
doing this on purpose.
Yeah, on purpose. And because I was going to pick up another friend to bring back to the party, right? So no main highways or anything, you know? So just back roads. And I basically, my buddy noticed I was on the wrong side of the road. He grabs the wheel and then the car skids back and forth. And then we smack right into a tree and wrap the car around a tree. And I blacked out for it. But then when I woke up, my car door on the left side was on top of me. Like it molded the entire car. And here's the crazy thing. Like that car was totaled, mangled. Me, my friend in the front and one friend in the back, like there was some glass shards. So like there was a couple pieces of glass in like our arms and stuff. But none of us had to go to the hospital. None of us like pretty much untouched. Obviously, if 1,000 pieces of glass come at you, a couple of them are going to stick, but no actual, not like nothing. And to me, that's definitely a moment where if you had driven by and looked at that car or walked by, you would have been like, yeah, people died. Like definitely people died. But we all had our seatbelts on. Thanks to the interesting part was the one that grabbed the wheel, which again, I was doing something wrong, but the wheel jerk, you know, debatable, whatever, was a little out of the blue. But he's the one though too, that reminded us all to buckle our seatbelts before. And probably if we didn't buckle up, honestly, it probably would have just flown through the front windshield or something. I don't know. But yeah, that's one I definitely just am like, God definitely could have been there, you know, because it's like,
definitely was. Yeah.
Especially
for sure,
all three of us, you know what I mean? Like
right.
The chances of that too is crazy that all three of us were like untouched pretty much.
Just fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, that's insane, bro. That's definitely some divine intervention. I love that. I'm going to ask that question every interview now because I find that people have crazy stories like that. So, okay, now I got to share with you something real quick because I've never actually shared this on here either. So very, very similar actually. This is wild. So in a car, I'm with 4, I think, people, and we're driving from Michigan, where I used to live, to New York City. And it's like mid-January. So it's freezing cold, whatever. We get up early, we leave, we're driving. It's like a 10-hour drive. And there's 2 cars. My bunch of friends are in the other car. And then I'm driving my mom's Envoy is what it was. And I think there was like 4 or 5 of us total in the car. And anyways, driving to New York, we're like 20 minutes into the trip, right? And the roads are extremely, extremely icy, and it's super early in the morning. And I'm following my buddy who's driving in front of us in the other car with the rest of the group, and he shifts lanes on the freeway. We're going like 70. He shifts lanes, so I go to shift lane. Well, when I shift over, I hit black ice, and the car just keeps going. And then it starts spinning, and we're going 70 miles an hour, and I'm in the middle of a 4 or 5 lane freeway. There's other cars right next to us. I'm like driving, and the steering wheel just starts doing this, right? And it just like my hands go up, bro. I'm like, I can't even. I talked to my friends after this, and they said this was the moment where like their lives flashed in front of them. I lose control of the steering wheel, and I just go in the fetal position as the driver on a freeway going 70 miles an hour. I literally go in the fetal position. I'm like, dude, we're done. And so this is insane, dude. So the car I'm driving does an entire 360 on the freeway. It doesn't flip. It somehow doesn't hit any car around us, and there's cars all around us. I to this day don't understand that. We go from all the way over from the far left lane. We go across the entire freeway doing a 360, and then we hit a sign, and then we slam into a ditch. Same kind of thing. Car wasn't total because it was a pretty big car, and we went into like a ditch. We didn't wrap a tree, thank God. But literally not a scratch on a single person. But here's what's crazy. So we get out of the car, everyone's kind of freaking out, we're like making sure everyone's okay. Not even 100 feet, bro. Not even 100 feet in front of us is 1,000-foot drop off. Like if we would have went another like 10 feet on the freeway of the spinning, we would have literally just took off this side of the road onto like 1,000-foot drop off and just totally died. But here's what's even crazier. So as we get out of the car, right, we're all freaking out. There just happens to be a police officer like that saw it happen. So he comes speeding down the freeway. He pulls over and he parks behind, where we crashed on the side of the freeway. And then we all get out of the car, and I'm like talking to him. My other buddy that's driving the car in front of us, he sees it all happen, or we call him, and then he turns around and he comes back, over or whatever, and he parks behind the police officer. And the cop says, don't park there. It's like a safety hazard. And we're like, okay, whatever. So then he has to drive away. And then like not even 5 minutes later, I'm standing on the side of the freeway right after I just had this accident. I'm explaining to the police officer what happened. And we hear like this crazy noise, and we all look down the freeway. The car's coming towards us. And I see another car that hits the same patch of black ice and does the exact same thing that we just did, and is literally losing control coming straight at us as we're standing on the side of the freeway, bro. And the cop literally looks at me and he says, run. So we just run, dude. And I just run down into the ditch, and I just like get out of the way. And like within 5 seconds, that car that lost control slams into the back of the cop car that was parked there helping us. And then they're all freaking out. And so it's this huge mess, and it's just crazy, bro. Cause it's like, same thing, dude. Divine intervention. It's like, there's no, like, come on, there's too many factors. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's wild. So anyways, long story short, we ended up making it to New York. We ended up borrowing another car, and it was just a crazy journey. But yeah, man,
that's
super
crazy,
wild
though,
stuff.
dude.
So
2 in a row. I mean, come on, man.
yeah, right. Super wild, man. Super wild. So I love it, man. That's awesome. That's crazy. I'm glad you're alive. Glad you made it here.
You too, man.
yeah, absolutely. So last 2 questions I have for you, dude. This is, I like to ask these to every single guest I have on here. And the reason being is because the entire purpose of this show, the goal that I have setting out for this show, is to interview people that I deem like a visionary. And basically the purpose of doing that is to extract information that hopefully helps the listeners find their purpose, because I think that's so cool. I believe everybody has a God-given purpose here on earth. And I think what better way to help people find that purpose than to go and, interview other people that have clearly found theirs. And so the 2 questions I have for you is, number 1, how would you define a visionary in today's world?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to Gary Vee because I think he's a prime example of a visionary. I think it's somebody that is aware, and then it's like can see the future, but it's not in like not in like a, I guess, weird way. You know, it's like you become aware based off of taking action and becoming confident in your life. And then you can start to see trends that come out. And by doing that, like there's a quote I read in this book. He's like, the most important person in the room is the one that can see the future. I can't remember who said it. And it really stuck with me because I thought about Gary Vee, and I'm like, he literally predicts things like all the time. And they're like a lot of the time right. So I think tapping into who you are as a person and becoming very aware of yourself and the outer world allows you to be a visionary, I'd say.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that answer. That's great, dude. So next question, last final question for you. How does someone go out there? How would you say someone can go out there and discover what their purpose is? How does someone find their purpose?
Yeah. So, just from my experience and a lot of others is I think it's just taking action consistently. So, all right, I'm going to try to word this the best way.
Yeah.
This
Loaded
is a fun question. So it's like, it's almost like this balance, right? So meaning as much as you want to try to become aware of yourself by thinking, you don't want to stay there forever, right? So how did I discover that like I want to do podcasting, and I'm actually an aspiring comedian too. That's a whole nother thing.
Let's go.
And just, but what I noticed is when I was in college, my major was actually accounting, right? So something that would be very isolating and not involved in people. So I tried out accounting class and I despised it. And I realized you couldn't pay me enough. You couldn't pay me enough to do that, man. It doesn't matter the amount. I hated it.
Yeah.
So once I realized that, I was like, okay, I tried that, hate it. Okay, what's the opposite of that? Probably something that's very involved with people, right? So I'm like public speaking, right? That was because I'll be in front of a bunch of people. And I really like that. And then I get into books, right? And that's very personal for people. Like a book to somebody is almost like their baby. So that's even more personal. Then I get into podcasting, which is, interviewing 20 people in one day. So whole point is to summarize that is it's like the more things you do and reflect. So after you do them, sit back with yourself and reflect on the experience. You can get closer and closer by trial and error to what you actually love doing. Right. So I found podcasting and like helping people become authors by starting with accounting. And pretty much, in my opinion, podcasting is like the opposite of accounting. Right. So yeah, that's my answer. Yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. That's a really good answer because it's practical. It's not some like esoteric answer. It's like, just go take massive action and discover what you truly enjoy doing by taking action on multiple things, and continuing on that journey. Because I truly do believe too that a huge part of it, and it sounds like you agree with this, is it is a journey. Like that's what I've been learning from hearing that answer from multiple different people now. Is that it's not just like you wake up and here's your purpose. It's a life's journey of constantly discovering what that is, and the practical way to do that is what you just explained. So that's awesome, man. I love that. I think that's going to bring a lot of value to people. Amazing. Thank you. So how can people find you? Anyone that wants to connect with you, work with you, just build, get on your show, whatever. How can people find you? What's the best way to connect?
So to authorsunite.com, if you're interested in that. Me personally, probably Instagram, Tyler B. Wagner is the handle.
Tyler B. Wagner. Let's go. My man, this was a great time. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a great time hearing your answers to these questions and just, diving into some pretty cool stuff. Really appreciate you being on here. This was a lot of fun, man. I hope you listen to this and share it with your people, but either way, dude, I had a good time.
Thank you, man. I enjoyed coming on. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. All right, brother. Well, we will talk soon. See ya.